Thank you very much for joining this presentation. My presentation is about the misleading practices within the fashion industry. However, let me introduce myself. Cristiano already mentioned that I'm part of the management team and the program leader for the fashion business program. I'm already almost more than 20, not almost, but more than 20 years active in the fashion industry, but more on the educational side of the fashion industry. And I choose actually this topic because fashion law is mainly associated with intellectual property rights, such as copyright, marketing, trademarks, and designs. But what we currently see is that the whole fashion industry is facing challenges and opportunities in our e-commerce age. We are a lot of us, and we see it with education at all, everything is virtual, and we see it with business as well. Business on e-commerce is increasing a lot. For this reason, law related to the marketing of fashion is more important, and it has been underexposed. Another aspect is that I have conducted research on the marketing, on misleading practices in the fashion industry, and my conclusion is that the fashion professionals do not have the intention to mislead consumer, but they are ignorant, and they actually need ignorance on the applicable law within the fashion industry, and they would like to have more education on that one. And so this is the reason why I choose this topic. It is not because I'm negative about what's happening currently in the whole fashion industry, no, but it's more an informative talk, and I would love to educate the fashion industry on fashion law. Okay, let me first start with the four important legal systems within on a global level. And on the next slide, this slide, you can see that the most important law systems are common law, civil law, socialist law, and Islamic law. Common law can be found in the more English-speaking countries, and it's more based on case law. And what you actually basically see is that agreements are fixed in contracts. Common law can be found in, for instance, the UK, Hong Kong, the US, and as I already mentioned, the most English-speaking countries. Civil law can be found in, for instance, the Netherlands, France, Spain, Germany, Japan, and more countries. And it's based on legislation and written law. And the fundamental rights of the inhabitants are the key principles of civil law. Socialist law is actually related to the communists and can be found in China, Russia, and Eastern Europe. And one of the key principles is that the court is more an extension of the state, so there's no independent court. And then Islamic law is based on Sharia principles, and it can be found in the Middle East, Turkey, and Saudi Arabia, just to give you an impression of the four most principal legal system on a worldwide level. So what does it mean for us as a European Union member state? And before I actually elaborate more on the law item, I just want to make sure that the UK, although they already have a Brexit, still are part of the European fashion law. What the UK actually choose for is that they will still be part of the European commercial market and the custom union. So everything on in my presentation regarding fashion law is also applicable for the UK. Regarding textile, there's only one legislation, and we call it the textile regulation, that consists in the 28 member states. And with the 28 member states, I still involve the UK because the textile regulation has been implemented in the UK as well. The textile regulation, the only thing the textile regulation does is that it gives indications on the fiber names, but also rules regarding how to label and how to mark the fiber composition on a textile product. That's the principle, the key principle of the textile legislation, the textile regulation, I'm sorry. Then we will have a look into the legislation that's related to the fashion industry. And I have actually chosen 6 of them, and I will not give a presentation on all 6 of them. That will cost me probably 6 hours or more, but I will just give you an overview of the most important one, and that's the Unfair Commercial Practice Directive. We call it the UCPD. Geo-blocking, and geo-blocking is relatively new, and the Product Safety Directive. And in order to have a little bit of an overflow on the presentation of Liana regarding the children clothing market. And we also have the European Union eco-label for textile products and REACH. Those two, REACH is more on the chemicals, it's more the registration on chemicals, and it gives rules regarding the chemicals you can use in products or not can use in products. And the eco-label for textile products, well, that's another presentation. It's quite a huge topic. So my focus will be on the UCPD, geo-blocking, and Product Safety Directive related to children clothing. Let me start with the UCPD, the Unfair Commercial Practice Directive. It's business to consumer related. Keep that in mind, because you will probably hear something about a misleading advertisement directive, but that's more business to business. The UCPD is business to consumer. And the Article 2 of the UCPD covers the advertising and in the definition of commercial practice. Not only the advertising, but also the marketing is covered in Article 2. So what is actually the key principle of the UCPD? The principle is that there should be correct and adequate information provided on of a product, and the main characteristics of the product should be mentioned. And the information should be truthful, it should be clear, and it should enable consumers to make an informed choice. So obviously nothing special, and that's what an honest markets practice would like to do. But we will see what will happen in the fashion industry practice. As a misleading advertising, there are a few articles that covers the misleading advertising, and I have actually chosen only 4 of them, but there are more topics. First of all, a misleading advertising can be a misleading action or a misleading omission, or it can be unfair under the general clause. And there's also an Annex 1, that's a blacklist, and in the blacklist, 31 forbidden practices are mentioned, and that's completely not allowed. When your practice is in one of the 31 blacklisted practices, then you are in breach with the UCPD. Okay, so what is a misleading action? A misleading action is if the information contains false information. It is untruthful, and it is trying to deceive or likely to deceive the average consumer. And most importantly, the consumer, based on the false information, the untruthful information, or the deceive or information what actually deceived the consumer takes a transactional decision or is purchasing the product. So what is a misleading omission? A misleading omission is that the trader or the business is hiding important elements of the product. or is providing the consumer in an unclear, an unintelligible, ambitious, or untimely manner the material information. What does it mean? I had to look it up. And it actually means that it's not understandable. Unintelligible means it's not understandable. And ambitious is that it's fake. So the information is quite fake. And untimely is it's be given in a very inappropriate manner. Okay, then what's the general clause? And that's the Article 5 of the UCPD, is that it refers to the professional diligence of the trader. So the trader should be involved in an honest market practice and abide the general principles of good faith in the trader's field of activity. It looks very standard, nothing special, but we'll see the other side as well. Okay, just to give you an overview of what I've told you before. This is a nice chart to look if a practice is prohibited or not prohibited. Okay, I will show you actually misleading marketing and communication, and my focus will be on the misleading fiber composition labels, vanity sizing, misleading green claims, fake fur versus real fur, and geo-blocking. I will first start with the textile regulation. As I already mentioned, the textile regulation exists in all the member states. It's applicable in all the member states. What is the textile regulation? The main thing of the textile regulation is to protect the consumer interest and actually to standardize the law within all the member states. So within all the member states, you will find one textile regulation. But keep in mind that the fine, when there's a violation of the textile regulation, the fine can be different. It differs per member state. In general, all the textile labels and marks must indicate the fiber content, and the information must be clear. It must be easy to read and separate for all other information. So I have some problems with easy to read because I need my glasses. I cannot easily read a label, and especially not the fiber composition label. So according the Article 11 of the textile regulation, the label or the marketing should mention the content, and it can be in descending order, and the lining should be mentioned. And there's an exception, and the exception is when the components represent less than 30% of the total weight of the textile product, you don't have to mention it in a label. So just to give you an example, suppose you have a product and the fabric of the product contains 55% wool, 21% viscose, 40% acrylic, and 10% nylon. You may describe it like, just like the example I already have, I made here, and that's 55% wool, 25% viscose. You don't have to mention the other one because it's less than 30%. Then the other example is a mixture of cotton, polyester, nylon, wool, and acrylic. And the only thing you have to mention is the cotton and the polyester, and you can just skip the other one. Just mention the name, but you don't have to mention the percentage. So what about the fines? I already told you that the textile regulation is applicable in all the member states, but the fine can differ. And I just have some example. In Belgium, for instance, you will see that the fine differs from 1,500 euros until 60,000 euros when there's a violation of the textile regulation. In Germany, it's up to 5,000 euros. So it's not a huge amount if you compare it with Belgium, or when you compare it with the Netherlands, for instance. The Netherlands is 335 to 70,000 euros, and it depends on the revenue of the company and how big the company is. And in the UK, it is max £5,000. And in Italy, I'm sorry, 3,098 euros. Okay, having said that, and I already told you about the textile regulation. Let's see how it what's happening in the fashion practice. The first one, what happened in 2019, actually already before 2019 in the Netherlands, actually in 2018 in the Netherlands, a whole discussion started of how accurate the fiber composition label on the Dutch market was. So it also ended at the government. There were discussions, and so the Dutch government actually started with an investigation. And what they have done is they use the fiber sort. It's a kind of automatic sorting technology that use a kind of infrared technology to assess the composition of textiles. So what they did is they wanted to know the consequences of, they wanted to map the consequences of not reliable composition claims on label, and to tackle actually misleading labels. And so they did, they started the investigations, and it's a huge report, and I only took, well, for me, for this presentation, the most important part, but it's a report of 60 pages. And their conclusion is that the pure fiber label is quite accurate. The blended fiber label is for 41% accurate, and the cotton, the blend cotton polyester label is has a 33% of accuracy rate. So if you look at the other way, then you will see that the misleading rates are 23%, and for the blended fibers 59%, and for cotton polyester blends it's 77%. So that are the misleading rates, and for me it was quite shocking. So another issue that has been raised recently is the new fibers. And currently we're looking into biotextiles, and next week Rebecca will give a presentation about biotextiles, and Maria also conducted research on Inatex and biotextiles, food waste actually that can be used for new fibers. So what I have seen a few months ago is that not a few months ago, but that vegan leather is upcoming. But what happened a few months ago is that the question has been raised, can you use the word vegan leather on a label? So what happened actually in Germany is that two fashion companies, Nuai and Swinder, and those two are famous because of their vegan fashion, and they were taken into court by the German Leather Association. And the case actually revolved around the use of, can you use the word apple leather? Because it describes, the word actually describes the material of origin that the companies are using in their products. And according to the German Leather Federation, the term apple leather is misleading because it's tricking consumers to purchase a product that's actually not made of real animal skin. So the case went to the German District Court in Hanover, and the German District Court decided that it's not misleading to consumers when manufacturers label vegan products with the term vegan leather or apple leather or Inatex leather. I'm sorry, Maria, I always get confused about this word. And the court argued that the companies, in this case, the companies Nuai and Swinder, they were using the word vegan in all the marketing communications, and they were very transparent about the material they used in their products. And they educated the consumer on what apple leather actually is and how it is produced. So for that reason, it's not misleading. So the conclusion can be, and if there's case law in one of the member states, then you will see that the case law will be applicable in all the member states. So all the member states will take the same judgment of the German law and take it in consideration in their own local law. Okay, and just to give you more information regarding the vegan leather, in our case, it was a combination between 50% apple waste and polythrena or something like that. I'm sorry, I cannot pronounce those things. And in the Swinder case, it was mushroom leather, and it was completely made of 100% in the fungus. Well, this is, again, the judgment of the district court in Hanover. And again, it's not misleading to label a vegan product as leather. Okay, then the next issue is real fur, fake fur. And according to the textile regulation, a textile product that consists of animal origin, for example, bones or animal furs, must be clearly labeled or marked using the phrase contains non-textile parts of animal origin. It can be on one label, on just one label, or the fiber composition label, but you can also choose to put it on another label or even a hand tag. So you probably will know the Tom Taylor case a few years ago. And what actually happened in the case of Tom Taylor, it's a German brand, you probably will know the brand. And in the collection of Tom Taylor, they actually found real cat fur, while the label stated that the production contained fake fur. And well, Tom Taylor mentioned, and there was a huge negative publicity for Tom Taylor, because you cannot label a collection with fake fur instead of real cat fur. And well, Tom Taylor started an investigation, and they apologized, and they recalled their whole collection, and they mentioned that they were not aware that there was any real cat fur in their collection, and that their Chinese manufacturer used the cat fur without their permission. So keeping that in mind, a few months ago, in the UK, they also started investigations regarding fur. And what they actually did is they bought 20 fur-trimmed fashion products, and the price range was £5, between £5 and £45, and they purchased all those items from markets, but also online stores. And they choose a few markets, and you can see Durham, Leeds, London, Newcastle, and a few other cities. And well, they actually discovered that the fur trimmed jackets and the shoes and some gloves, they were labeled with fake fur, but there was no synthetic fur in the products. And all the products were found to contain real animal fur, including a pair of children's shoes and baby's hat. This is, it was huge in the newspapers, and even the UK consumer organization started to make some, started some investigations in order to prevent this for the future. So the other issue is fanaticizing. Fanaticizing is, we call it size inflation. And so the labeling of clothing has been, with sizes, has been made smaller. than the actually cut of a garment. So for instance, what you see is a size 40 is being labeled as a size 36. And why do companies do that? Because research has shown that smaller size make a woman feel better about themselves. And the better they feel, the more they're willing to pay for a dress or a pair of jeans. So it's a kind of neuromarketing. Just keep in mind, there's no legislation on the sizing of clothing. There are no regulations. There are only standards, and the standards are voluntary. So a member state can choose for a size designation, but they have to pay for it. So it's payable. And for that reason, we see that most companies try to do their own sizing, and they are also trying to, well, mislead the consumer and trying to get more to sell more of the products, but by sizing, by vanity sizing. To give you an impression, if you look at the brands on the high street, then you will see that the sizing really differs. Just to give you an impression, if you look at Next and compare it with, let's say, Topshop, then you will see there's a difference of more than 1 inch. And if you look at the size 14, then you will see with Topshop that a size 14 of Next is being measured in inches of 30. And if you look at Topshop, it's 31. So it's more than 1 inch. And it differs. And even if you look at New Look and Next, it's a difference of 2 inch, more than 2 inch. Well, is vanity sizing a violation of law? No, not actually, no. Basically, no, not, because there are no European Union regulation for the way standard clothing sizes correspond to the physical measurements. So it's not legally binded, because the fashion companies have to pay for a standard. And most of the companies don't have the budget for that. Greenwashing has been, well, a huge topic a few years ago, and even from the European Commission perspective, they were planning to implement law on greenwashing, and they conducted a huge research in all the member states, and they decided not to put it in legislation, but to educate the companies and also educate the member states. So what is greenwashing? Greenwashing is that there's a lot of marketing and spending more money on time, and spending more time and money and claiming to be green, and using advertisement tools, rather than actually implementing the business practice to minimize the environmental impact of the business. And so if you look at legislation, then you will see that Articles 6 and 7 actually undermines the greenwashing. Traders should present the environmental claims in a specific, accurate, ambiguous manner. And that's the general clause, and they need scientific evidence for claiming the products to be green. So what we have seen a few months ago is that H&M, Zara, and other fashion brands were actually tricking shoppers with fake sustainable claims. And in Denmark, they have been fined because the consumer authority in Denmark found out that H&M and Zara They claim to be, their marketing was claimed to be misleading. And according to their law, the product's main quality must be easily accessible and understandable for the consumer. And what they did not actually do, those brands, is it was not immediately clear in what way the products they made were sustainable. So if you are marketing your product in a sustainable way, or if you have sustainable product, just be clear about how sustainable your product is and in what way your product is sustainable. And that's actually the mistake most of brands are making currently. They just try to market their product, but they don't inform their consumers in what way they are sustainable. So it should be, again, it should be easily accessible and it should be understandable for the consumer. So the last topic is geo-blocking regulation. What's geo-blocking? Geo-blocking is the regulation prevents actually the pricing and the service discrimination between the European Union consumers. So this means that one price should be given in within all the member states of the European Union. So if you purchase, for instance, if I purchase my product in the UK, I should pay the same price. Or that's not a good option. That's not a good example because in the UK they have pounds. But if I purchase my product in Germany, for instance, or in Belgium, I should pay the same price for the product. So it's what I've already mentioned is that the geo-blocking regulation is quite new. And so we have seen some fines have been given to huge companies because they did not comply to the geo-blocking regulation. And this is Nike. And what Nike actually did is they prevented many of their retailers from selling the Nike products in the different European countries. So that was actually leading to less choice and higher prices for consumers. And the consumers were consumers from the East European countries. So they had to pay higher prices for the products. So Brussels, the European Union, they fined Nike for 12.5 million for unlawfully restricting cross-border sales of all the products. Another example is Guess. And Guess, what happened with Guess, they were fined for selling overpriced merchandise within the European Union. And they received a fine of 45.2 million for geo-blocking their product and restricting the retailers from advertising and selling cross-border within the European Union. So it is within the European Union. Another example is Hello Kitty. And Hello Kitty received a fine of 6.2 million euros. Okay, finally, the product safe and children clothing. The key principle is that all the products marketed within the European Union must be safe to use. And keep in mind that some countries, some European countries, have specific legislations for their own. So they have their local law as well. We have it in the Netherlands, the UK and Ireland. They also have the national legislation regarding the flammability of children wear, but also the safety. There is a RAPEX database. You can find it on the website of the European Union. And every day it's being updated. And what they actually do is recall the products that are not safe and they publish it in the RAPEX database. You can find in the RAPEX database also products from IKEA, for instance. So it's not the smaller companies who are doing the recalls. Most of the times the huge, the multinationals who are doing a lot of recalls. And you can find them all in the database of RAPEX. So the key principle is that for children clothing from 0 to 14 years, you have to prevent and look at the risk of suffocation, strangulation, or injury. So this means that the Commission has implemented standards on cords and drawstrings on children clothing. And here are some examples. You can use, instead of using, how do you say that, the neck cord, you can use buttons, you can use elastic, or all those things. And they even sell a kind of thing, a product that really avoid choking hazard. If it fits into the cylinder, then the button or the product or the cord is not safe for children. You can just purchase those on Amazon. So my conclusion is providing accurate and reliable information on marketing tools, so that can be websites, hang tags, labels, is very important. Be transparent about your product. It's not always about misleading the consumer, but most of the time it's ignorance. I hope you enjoyed the presentation. Thank you for your time. Thank you.